So this first exercise, by the way, there's 26 exercises in this, so we're not going to get through them, but we'll go through. This one is an interesting one, and this is about breathing very, very light. So it's the opposite to what's commonly thought. So say, for example, here you have your normal breathing pattern, and the individual is taking a normal breath in through their nose and out through their nose, and in through their nose and out through the nose. And what we want to do here is we want to have a very soft and gentle inhalation, almost that your breathing is imperceptible. And at the top of the breath, a total feeling of relaxation to the body and a prolonged and a relaxed exhalation. And then after you breathe out, you're taking a very soft and gentle inhalation through your nose, really soft, gentle inhalation through your nose. And at the top of the breath, a total feeling of relaxation to the body and a gentle and prolonged breath out. And the instruction is, we're sitting up straight in a chair, or you could do it cross-legged on the floor, lie on your back. And if you're sitting, just to imagine there's a piece of string pulling you upwards from the top of the back of your head. You could have your hands in your chest and tummy, or you could place your hands on your lap. And to observe your breath as it enters and leaves your nose. Feel the slightly colder air as it enters your nostrils, and feel the slightly warmer air as it leaves your nose. So it's really about bringing attention from the mind onto the breath. And when you can feel your breathing, begin to reduce the speed of each breath as it enters and leaves your nose. So your breathing should be light, it should be quiet, and it should be calm. Slow down your breathing so that you feel hardly any air entering and leaving your nostrils. So your breathing should be so quiet that the fine hairs within the nostrils do not move. Now, by slowing down the speed of your breathing with the intention of breathing less air into the body, the goal is to create a feeling that you would like to take in more air. So you're doing it correctly if you feel breathless, or if you feel that you would like to take in more air, or if you feel that you're not getting enough breath. To create air hunger, your breathing volume now should be less than what it was before you started. But you shouldn't feel stressed. So if the air hunger gets too strong, take a rest for 20 seconds or so and then start off again. So really the whole emphasis here is on focusing on the airflow coming in and out of the nose, and really slowing down the speed of the breath as it enters the nostrils. So your breathing is so smooth that the fine hairs within the nostrils do not move. Can you breathe in so quietly, almost that you feel hardly any air coming into your nose? Can you take the littlest amount of air possible into your nose? And then when you're breathing out, have a really slow and relaxed exhalation. The objective is to breathe less air. The objective is to feel air hunger. Do that for a few minutes. Now, as you do that, check the saliva in the mouth. It's quite normal that when you do this exercise, there's a number of things that are happening. Number one is it's a great meditation, because when you are slowing down the speed of your breathing, your mind is anchored onto the breath. So from a meditative point of view, it's really good. And the mind has less of a tendency to wander. So I think it's a great way to support mindfulness. But the other thing is about this is that slowing down the breathing to breathe less air. And you know that you're breathing less air if you feel air hunger. So slow to breathe less air, and you should feel air hunger. And air hunger signifies that carbon dioxide is increased in the blood. And as carbon dioxide is increasing, your blood vessels dilate. So I remember always having cold hands and cold feet, and I tried this was 20 years ago, and I felt a warmness coming into my hands. And it's not just that your blood vessels going into the hands dilate, but it's the 70,000 miles of blood vessels throughout the human body. Now, the other thing about this is that you'll notice that most people will notice that they've increased watery saliva in the mouth. And this is an indicator that we've activated the parasympathetic nervous system, or we've had the body to bring the body into relaxation. So people will often as well, they feel drowsy. So this is a very good exercise to do for people with insomnia, and for people who are in increased sympathetic drive or stress state. So I'd say to people with anxiety, be careful with doing the exercise, because the air hunger, could could set off a bit of panic, but you have to go very, very easy with it. Now, we can do a second variation of this, and this is similar enough to the last one, but instead of focusing on the breath in, we're actually focusing on the exhalation. So we are taking a slow breath in through the nose, but the intent is really to have a low and long and prolonged exhalation. Now, this is suppose as you can think of the opera singers of old. They were singing with a candle placed about 10 centimeters from their face. And the intention of the candle, of course, was lighting. So there was a candle flame there. And the opera singer was to sing with such conservation of the breath that they didn't blow out the candle. Because the training involved, and I suppose it's a recognition that there's a cost associated with hard breathing. If you breathe hard, it can bring on fatigue. And any of your listeners who talk all day, they will know well. They're on a phone all day, they may have meetings all day, they may be teaching, they may be in sales, and at the end of the day, they're pretty much exhausted. They're wiped out. And they're wiped out not because of the mental concentration, but because of the act of talking and the impact that that's having on breathing. So it's causing the person to breathe more. This exercise is good for helping the biochemistry, but also to stimulate the vagus nerve. So you place your finger underneath your nose so that you can monitor the airflow from your nose. And you're bringing your attention onto your finger. And as you feel the warm air on your finger, so it's coming from the breath, gently slow down your breathing so that you can feel hardly any warm air onto your finger. So you're taking a soft and slow breath in through your nose and allow a gentle and prolonged breath out. Breathe so softly that you feel hardly any air blowing onto your finger. Imagine that your finger is a feather and that your breathing is so soft that the feather doesn't move. So if you were to pretend that your finger is a feather and that your breathing is so light that the feather doesn't flutter, the feather isn't moving. And there's no need to hold your breath or to restrict your breathing. It's really just paying attention to the airflow coming onto the finger. And it's about breathing less air. So the more warm air that you feel, the harder you are breathing. Can you quieten and soften your breathing to the point where you feel hardly any air on your finger? You're doing the exercise correctly if you feel a tolerable need for air. I need you to feel like you want to breathe in more air. And you continue practicing that exercise for about 4 minutes or so. And again, the objective here is to breathe less air. So these two exercises are focusing on the biochemistry. Now, this is a third variation, which is cupping the hands on the face and breathing in a very small amount of breath in through the nose and a small amount of breath out. Now, this is quite a tough one. So you're cupping your hands on your face, and the objective here is to breathe hardly any air. So you're focusing on the airflow coming in and out of your hands. And the more warmer air that you feel coming into your hands, you know the harder you are breathing. So what I would like you to do is to breathe in a flicker of air into your nose and a flicker of air out of your nose. Breathe in for 1 centimeter or half an inch and breathe out for 1 centimeter or half an inch. Breathe in for 1 centimeter, half an inch. Breathe out for 1 centimeter, half an inch. Breathe in for 1 centimeter. Breathe out for 1 centimeter. So you're taking a flicker of air in and out of your nose, and as you exhale that gas, carbon dioxide enriched air into your hands, you're rebreathing carbon dioxide into your lungs, which increases CO2 in your lungs and increases CO2 in the blood. So the purpose of that exercise is continue with the air hunger for about 4 minutes. Now, I'll always focus on the biochemistry first, and then we focus on the biomechanics. And here's where we have individuals, they place their hands either side of the lower ribs. And as they breathe in, the intention is that they're pushing their lower ribs outwards, but you shouldn't hear your breathing. So it's often a mistake that's made when the focus is on improving the biomechanics of breathing. The intention is that oftentimes the student feels that they have to be taking these full big breaths, and they don't. Because if you're taking full big breaths, you're sacrificing the biochemistry. You could be. So with this, the person has their hands either side of their lower ribs, and as they breathe in, their ribs are gently moving outwards. And as they breathe out, their ribs are gently moving inwards. So as you breathe in, the ribs are gently moving outwards. And as you breathe out, the ribs are gently moving inwards. And as you breathe in, the ribs are gently moving out. And as you breathe out, the ribs are gently moving in. So this is breathing low or breathing deep in the true sense of the word. That during the inhalation, the diaphragm is moving downwards. And as the diaphragm is moving downwards, there's movement outwards to the sides, to the back, and to the front. So we have to think of the core as a box. And at the top of the core is the diaphragm. You have the abs to the front, you've got the spinal muscles to the back, and you've got the pelvic floor to the bottom. And then we bring in resonance frequency breathing. And this is slowing down the respiratory rate to between 4.5 and 6 breaths per minute. And this is about stimulating the vagus nerve. So this is really important in terms of, causing or helping with recovery. So when we stimulate the vagus nerve, it's been known since 1913 that by stimulating the vagus nerve, it releases a substance called acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter. And this causes a slowing of the heart. So somebody who wants to recover post-physical exercise, slow breathing, especially a prolonged and relaxed exhalation. But I'd just like to show you something else in this, which is quite interesting. And I'm just going to put in Kevin Tracy. There's more to this. Back in 1998, there was a neurosurgeon called Kevin Tracy in New York. And he thought that if we could stimulate the vagus nerve, we can reduce harmful inflammation. And you can imagine the number of conditions that inflammation is playing a role. And he was able to electronically stimulate the vagus nerve. And he found that the nervous system could be used almost like a computer to trigger commands that stop a problem in its tracks. And apparently Tracy's colleagues were outside in the corridor placing bets that he wasn't going to achieve what he wanted to achieve. So further trials confirmed Tracy's findings. Using electronic implants to stimulate the vagus nerve in humans, he produced a dramatic reduction and even remission in rheumatoid arthritis, a condition with no cure. So this helped to illuminate the vagal system's close interrelationship with the inflammatory system. So the first steps here is that the vagus nerve, by secreting, so crucially, ACH, acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter secreted by the vagus nerve, it blocks the release of many of the pro-inflammatory cytokines. So these cytokines are involved in producing inflammation. If we can stimulate the vagus nerve, can we reduce the production, or can we reduce inflammatory cytokines? And then the question to ask is, how can we stimulate the vagus nerve? And we had as Oxygen Advantage instructors, we had a seminar with Dr. Jay Wiles, who is an expert in clinical, I think his background is clinical psychology, but he's worked with a lot of people with PTSD and with anxiety, and he's also an Oxygen Advantage instructor. And he was looking at the exercises from the Oxygen Advantage, which is basically this book, and asking which exercises can we improve heart rate variability. Nose breathing will increase heart rate variability. Breathing light increases heart rate variability. Breathing slow and breathing low. So pretty much all of the exercises that we do in terms of functional breathing patterns can improve heart rate variability. Now, the other point that Mike, just before we go on, in terms of, I would say to anybody, if you are looking at breathing, that the application is enormous here. Breathing in asthma, breathing for females, diabetes, epilepsy. improving heart rate variability, improving sleep, panic disorder, anxiety, and racing mind, post-COVID. And there's protocols for each of these conditions, as well as chapters, so people can dig deeper into it. So we have exercises as well then, which are very popular at the moment, to stress the body. So there's exercises to improve focus and concentration, and exercises to stress the body. I'm going to just go to a couple of them. And I'm going to go to exercise number 24 on page 87 here. And the reason that we're looking at this exercise here is, if you do fast, full breaths, which is a stressor to the body, and then you exhale and you hold your breath, it's very important that you recover your breathing by breathing light for at least 3 minutes afterwards. And the other thing that I would say is, only do these exercises if you're not pregnant and if you're in good health. Your Bolt score ideally should be greater than 25 seconds. And the reason I talk about this is because it seems to be that individuals with a low Bolt score, when they do hyperventilation and breath holding, their carbon dioxide levels aren't recovering, and it could actually lower their sensitivity to carbon dioxide as opposed to improve it. Whereas an individual with a Bolt score above 25 seconds, when they do hyperventilation and breath holding, they seem to have a better recovery. But I think it's very important that if we stress the body, and you stress the body with the speed of the exhalation. So in this instance, it's a very fast exhalation. That's a stressor. Whereas the previous exercises, we had a really slow and relaxed exhalation. That brings the body into relaxation. So this exercise is a stressor. We have an exhale hold, exhale to functional residual capacity, and only holding the breath until a moderate air hunger. We don't want blood oxygen saturations dropping down to 60%, to 50%, to 40%. The reason being is, we've never done this in our evolution. And I don't know if I want to expose the body to such critically low O2, because I really wonder, when is a good stressor becoming a bad stressor? So we want to stress the body, but we want to do it within limits, and then we want to have recovery. And this is where the breathe light exercise is coming in here for 3 minutes. And I'll just show one more exercise as a stressor. And this was taken from Yasin Weiser, and I'm terrible at pronouncing his name, but he's based in Germany. Interesting guy, 35 years he's been practicing meditation and mixed martial arts. And he used to do cage fighting before the rules come in. So I think his first round would be 5 minutes, and then they had a 1 minute rest, and then they would fight until submission or knockout. So it wasn't for the faint-hearted. Here's an exercise that came from him, quite a useful exercise. And this would be a good exercise to stress the body, but it's not going to disturb everything so much. So, for example, you have very short, rapid breaths. So you're exchanging a lot of air in dead space. You're exercising the breathing muscles. You are stimulating the vagus nerve. You will activate a stress response here. You start off with short breaths, short breath in, short breath out, short breath in, short breath out, at a speed that you're comfortable with. And then you increase the speed to between 1 and 3 breaths per second. Short, fast breaths with movement of the diaphragm. You do that for 1 minute, and then you breathe light for 1 minute. So you have the stressor, you have recovery. And then you do a second round, stressor, recovery, and a third round, stressor, recovery. And this is shaking the autonomic nervous system. So, this is just, there are only a few exercises. There's 26 exercises that we have. There's different variations of it, but it'll kind of give people an insight into, the potential here. And, that's where it's at.